Episode of the SDSU podcast is sponsored by Marz Energy Cream, the first ever topical energy delivery product. Think energy drink, but it's a lotion. It contains a proprietary blend of natural ingredients, including caffeine, taurine, and B vitamins, to provide an energizing boost. And unlike traditional energy drinks and gels, Marz Energy Cream is sugar-free, contains no artificial flavors, colors, or preservatives. If you want to try it out, go to marzenergydrinkcream.com and use the code Andre, spelled ANDRE, at checkout to receive 15% off a purchase of a 50 milliliter tube. You are listening to the SDSU podcast presented by the East Village Times with your hosts Andre Hagberdian and Paul Garrison. Welcome back, listeners, to another episode of the SDSU podcast. This is episode 101.
Let's go.
We're officially in triple digits now. No going back. I'm on Hagberdian, joined as always by Paul Garrison. How's the night going, Paul?
The night's going really, really well. Today, this is a Wednesday night after the kids go to bed when we always record, and it's Little League day, bro. So I get to go and get the glove on, throw the ball around. You know, it's fun to see Father Time kind of slipping by me. You know, we're out there, and one of their teammates is a really great athletic young lady. She just has such a better arm than I do. Easy arm strength. You know what I mean? And I'm really like sore and like working into it and stuff. And I'm just like, man, to be 11 again.
Yeah, that's
How
good.
are you?
I'm good. I think I'm excited to have the NBA back.
Okay. Yeah.
Had to endure watching the Bulls lose another game tonight, but you know, I guess it's not much of a surprise considering they did nothing differently with the team and decided to run it back despite it not working last year.
Right.
The Rangers won the World Series tonight, so happy for Corey Seager. I'm sure Padres fans are happy for several guys as well, like Bruce Bochy and Travis Jankowski. Who else?
I think Austin Hedges. You know, they got to be super stoked for Austin Hedges because it was just like they drew it up. You know.
Yeah, it's 10 days out from the game against Nevada. You know, I didn't think there would be another game this season that I would dread talking about or doing grades for than the Air Force one, but here we are.
Yeah.
You know, whatever excuses we've said or can be made by anybody after, you know, the first 7 games, you know, none of them really applied to this game. It was an embarrassing performance. You know, certainly in the most embarrassing one in recent memory when you factor in the opponent was on a 16-game losing streak. There was statistically the worst defense in FBS, and you get shut out at home. So, you know, that all those things bundled together and added on to how the season had been going so far, you know, definitely made it feel a little differently than the other losses for obvious reasons. The feelings and the displeasure from the outside obviously intensified about the program. You know, I saw some national college football writers tweet about it too, obviously with a team breaking a 16-game losing streak. It's a positive for them, but it's also makes it nationally look bad for the Aztecs. So what was your overarching reflections coming out of that performance?
Well, I think that's really, you know, maybe we can make the podcast kind of get through like we were talking off of the air, kind of getting through some of the grades a little bit quicker and kind of talking in depth about, I think, what this loss means in the scope of all of the different parts of San Diego State and their program. I would like to talk, you know, a little bit more reflection now after talking with JD Wicker for our 100th episode. We obviously, you know, at the press conference Tuesday, we talked with Ryan Lindley on Monday. So, you know, we really, you know, done our due diligence to try to really go and get a good pulse for the team. And I think it would be a good idea just to talk about that in general. So I'm not exactly sure how to break this down. But, you know, I think if we were going to just do grades, right? The offense got an F, the defense got an A, special teams, probably got a B. They were good. Neither, if you're wanting to be, which we'll talk about. I thought that as Jalen Maiden only having 47 yards and obviously missing a whole bunch of passes that were there, and it's probably the wrong word, only considering that he didn't get that many opportunities. So I thought that was a real big. It's just hard to try to like dig yourself out of a hole that you've created if you don't get the opportunities. That said, yeah, he put a money ball to Mekhi Shaw. I'd wager money in Las Vegas that Mekhi Shaw is going to get that ball 9 times out of 10. And it just happened to be the 1 time out of 10 that he doesn't get it is the one chance that he got against Nevada. I described the game in my, kind of analysis of it as a comedy of errors, and just kind of went through and it was just that every drive, it was somebody else on the offense who was doing something stupid that killed the drive and prevented them from winning. And so it snowballed. It was terrible. We talked about in Hawaii, part of our conversation was that, Rocky Long and lots of people talk about that it's the game after Hawaii that you really have the letdown. And we said at the time, man, it's sure good that they get to play Nevada for that letdown after Hawaii. But I mean, true to form, they had a huge letdown. And whatever any of that is, I don't know. But we definitely vocalized that as we were, thinking about the Hawaii game and being out there. So initial thoughts, it was ugly. It was ugly. I think in some regards, if you're gonna be bad, you might as well be like the best at being bad. The only entertainment value in more a bad sadistic ways, it was so bad that you just were like, is this really going to be the outcome? Like it just defied. Like it was just like, okay, well now there's this many minutes in the third, and now they better, now they better, and it just seemed like at any moment San Diego State was going to get that one touchdown, and there was going to be some weird push to the finish. I mean, every single time they would almost get down by 2 scores. Nevada would clank a field goal off the upright. They would miss another one. They would get a huge long sack that took them out of field goal range. I mean, it was like, a team that had lost 16 straight games was like saying, we would love to make this 17. Please, Aztecs, beat us. And they didn't do it.
I was going to say, I think when those 2 field goals both missed, everybody probably in the stadium was like, well, we're going to score a touchdown. We're going to win 7-6.
Yeah.
And it's not going to be pretty, and it's not going to make anyone happy. But hey, the Aztecs would have won at least. But it just every drive, ended with some sort of failed play, whether it was 3rd or 4th down. Obviously, that Mekhi Shaw pass might have been one of the best throws we've seen Jalen Maiden ever make.
Yeah,
like
completely.
On a dime, drop back, perfect connection, perfect timing, perfect loft. And it was dropped. And as you said, Mekhi Shaw would be the last person we would think that would drop it. And he's so reliable and he makes so many plays, and everyone's going to have a drop once in a while. Even the great ones do. But that was definitely, if we're talking specifically offense, when teams usually get shut out, what can you point at, right? You point out, okay, they probably turned the ball over 3 to 4 times. Right. That wasn't the case, right? Until the last minute of the game and Maiden's fumble, 0 turnovers. Right? You say, oh, well, they probably gave up 6 or 7 sacks because they couldn't protect the quarterback. Well, no, they only gave up 1 sack. So then, like, how is it possible that you don't turn the ball over, you don't give up more than 1 sack, that you don't score?
Field position. They must have been backed up in their own end zone all day. No.
What's crazy to me is those 5 straight possessions where they got the ball pretty much, let's average it out at midfield.
Yeah.
Right? They only had 1 play inside the red zone, 1 snap inside the red zone the entire game, and that was the Jack Browning missed field goal. It's incomprehensible for me to think that an offense would, even getting the field position they did, that they would not get inside the red zone for an offensive play in the entire game.
Absolutely.
You point back and you start and end with the coaching and the game plan. Coach Hoke said after the game that he was happy with the game plan. But I don't know what you could be happy about when your offense doesn't move the ball in that manner and only throwing 14 times. They ran the ball okay, but it wasn't great. It wasn't like they were getting chunks and moving the ball downfield with the running game. And there's just a few people mentioned during the game and after the game about how overemphasizing winning the time of possession battle makes the offense too conservative. And I asked Coach Hoke that on Tuesday. He obviously shot that down, but I don't know if his answer really answered my question per se about why he didn't think that it made them too conservative. But I think it plays a part when, you get to a point where you're like, okay, our defense is holding them. We don't need to score too many points today. So let's just make sure we are conservative. Let's do these plays. And it's just like us, maybe just like everybody in the stadium, the staff thought, hey, we'll get that one touchdown and then we'll win 7-6 or 10-6 or whatever. And we'll just worry about it next week. And obviously it turned out to be the opposite with not scoring and losing 6-0. So, the Brian Lindley made the reference to the comedy of errors. Your article last week used that comedy of errors. Did he say that unprompted, or was that a little bit of tongue in cheek, knowing that you had written an article about that?
I didn't follow up and ask him that, but we just kept asking him about, what happened against Nevada, what took place. And he said it just everybody kept taking their turns. And he said if it wasn't so serious, I would use something like a comedy of errors or something. And I was like, okay. So I don't know if it was just luck. I mean, obviously it's Shakespeare. I'm not exactly the guy who invented that. It could have been a coincidence. But I mean, that's what it was. It was crazy. I definitely think that one of the hard parts about covering the team, by and large, the coaching staff is never they'll never throw anybody under the bus. They'll challenge their best players to be better, their older players to be better, but that's like as negative as you'll ever hear them talk about a player. Mark Redmond, Coach Lindley talked about on Monday. He's somebody that we need to see play at a higher level. Like that's as low as you'll ever hear them talk about a player. And I think it's the same thing for Coach Hoke. I'm not sure. I'd have to listen to it again. Did he use the word happy? I think he just, he said it was fine. It was fine. I even asked about following up with that, how about so the game plan going in was fine, but how about how it was executed and how it was called? Yeah. And he was like, yeah, it was fine. Coach Lindley, who is the guy that Coach Hoke is not going to throw under the bus, which, personally, I think is a good characteristic. Although, like you said, it makes our job harder. But Coach Lindley said the first thing that he did when he got out of the box is he went and apologized to Kurt Maddox, because the defense played a hell of a game and the offense didn't do their half. But it was interesting because I had asked Coach Lindley when he said that about the fact that from Cedarius Barfield first, and then every single time Hoke's talked about the game, he's talked about is that the defense didn't get a turnover that could have done more. Yeah. And to your point earlier, the defense got them the ball on the special teams at the Nevada 49, and the Nevada 44, 3 possessions, bookended by SDSU 42 and SDSU 48. Pretending that, those are turnovers, right? Those are turnovers. But the fact that the defense is not pointing fingers, that they're not saying we did our job, where are you guys? And then you get that divided locker room. That was what I was asking him about. And Coach Lane said that comes from the top. And I think that more than anything, the comments that Coach Hoke made after the game, I think they're in that light where it's just he's not going to go in there and say, Ryan is a young offensive coordinator and he just was terrible tonight. You know what I mean? And it's one of those things where it's this is the first shutout, I think, at a home game in my lifetime for an Aztec team. Yeah. The offensive coordinator and he said it's on our shoulders, clearly had a really bad night. The 14 passes, he said, was not the design going in, but that as they, failed to pick up some third downs, failed to do positive things in the passing game, they thought that the running game was a little bit successful, and they kind of just wanted to go with the little bit of success that they had. And so it's just what a remarkable game. But yeah, I think F's all around. I'd be tempted, to give an incomplete to the wide receivers just for the lack of opportunities, except that drop was just so
Yeah.
huge in the game that I think they got to be put into the score as well. The running backs, at this point, they don't show any of that ability to make somebody miss. You know what I mean? It just seems like they run right to whoever's there, and there's no, I don't know, quick twitch. Is this where I get to finally use it properly to be
Yeah.
able to like move around and make somebody miss? And so they're not really helping their offensive line very much. It's just I think for me, well, we'll talk about this later. What about the defense, man? What would you go ahead and talk about the defense a little bit, unless you had more about the offense?
No, I think you covered it. The only thing about the offense I wanted to mention is that I feel very lucky and fortunate to have a press pass and to be able to interview, go to press conferences, ask questions, and do
100%.
all that. One of the things I really don't love is having to ask the players questions after such a stunning and such a bad loss, right?
Right.
And that game obviously fit the bill, but I thought Cade Bennett and
Good point.
Barfield did a great job. I thought Cade Bennett, especially, basically he looked pissed off, which I think he should be, but he was frank and honest about how unacceptable the offense's performance was, how they let the defense down, and how they need to be better, how they weren't physical enough. And like, I thought he was really good in that setting. I think it was the first time he's been at a post-game press conference. And I thought the way his demeanor was, obviously he was, disappointed and angry in a way. But I thought that the way he took ownership of the offense, I think, was very commendable. The defense, yeah, the comment about not forcing turnovers, as you said, I mean, when the offense is getting the ball in Nevada territory multiple times in a row, I don't think even Sedarius Barfield put in the post game said, "Oh, last week we scored a touchdown. We should have scored a touchdown this week too. We would have won the game." It's like when a defensive player has to say that, that's just bad. That is wrong. For a defensive player to say that we should have scored a touchdown and we let the team down by not scoring a defensive touchdown, that's just wrong. I think the defense did its part.
At the same time, that's a pretty. I don't think at I don't know how old Sedarius is, but at that age to be able to either relay that message because the coaches, coached you to be able to say that
Yeah.
before you got out. But I don't think so, because I mean the other part is, talk about Cade Bennett being his first time. That is not the first time that we've had that conversation with said Barfield after a
Right.
loss, and he just keeps going to that reservoir of and again, I just think that it is very easy. It would be very easy after that game to be like, well, not all of us sucked against Nevada.
Yeah.
Like, you know what I mean? And we get to say that because it's not our job to try to hold a team together or to do any of those kinds of things. But that I just thought super interesting, super interesting.
Cyrus Fiaseu, regardless of how poorly the defense had been playing all year, he had been that one guy that was just putting up ridiculous statistics. I mean, he leads the team, I think, in like 6 different defensive categories. Like you just don't see that very often.
No,
And he's been balling out despite the defense overall not playing up to standards. I think the secondary had a better day. I mean, you could say that they were playing an offense that wasn't as explosive or as good as that they played, but you played a team that's in front of you, and you still need to perform, and you still need to. And they, obviously, you could say they may miss 2 kicks, so you could say, 12 points would have still been a great defensive performance for the Aztecs, even with all 4 kicks made. And I thought, just overall, they played a really good game. They kept the team in the game. They kept it from being an even more embarrassing loss if they lost something like 24-0 or something like that. So very commendable performance. But now they got to take it a step further and do it against Utah State and Colorado State and San Jose State, or else really that one game didn't really mean anything.
thought the secondary played really well. I thought, towards the end of the game, those jump balls that Noah Tumblin gave up, a couple of them would have dropped my corner grade a little bit. Josh Hunter, I thought should be mentioned that he got his
Yeah.
first start, and I thought he looked really good. I thought, they didn't substitute as much. And, if you're playing well, why would you? And for as much as saying, hey, well, this is Nevada, they threw the ball all over the place against USC.
Yeah.
When your defense is, I thought you were I thought you just said it right in your preview where it's like, you see San Diego State's numbers and how you're just like, no, these aren't very good. This is after the game against Nevada. And, you want them to be, I mean, you want them to be able to do this. I mean, this is how San Diego State can win. I thought the defense played really, really well. I thought it was even harder, as you give the ball to the offense, those 5 drives that are inside of that great territory and they do nothing with it. It's very easy to have letdowns after that. It's very easy to just kind of mail it in, and they didn't. They allowed the offense to get as many opportunities as they could to try to get it going forward. So all in all, I mean, I think it's a very encouraging sign. And can they build off it? We'll see, because they're going to face an offense that's pretty good. But I thought, again, I thought all of the players played well. I thought there was plays by the defensive line for the first time. That people, getting into the backfield and doing those things. Their Nevada's quarterback, who is has the ability to move around, and that has been a problem for San Diego State. They were able to play well against him. Give up 100 yards passing, and 40 of them are on one play. It's pretty significant, and 44 of them on one play, and you get the rest of the 21, 50 yards. That's spectacular. 3.7 yards a carry for the rush. I mean, they just did everything that they wanted to do, which I think makes this game such a tragedy, because, like you said, if they had been able to win 7-6, and you're sitting here at 4-4, and all you need is to figure out a way to split these last 4, a bowl is in sight. Even as ugly as they played. But as it is, they didn't do that, and they weren't able to get that win. And so now they have an uphill battle.
More evidence for how the defense's performance, I think, should be commended is that Nevada went and put up 34 against Danny Gonzalez's 3-3-5 defense the following week.
Good point.
So it's not like they went back and got, shut down by another, defense. So, Nevada has been able to put up points and yards against other defenses. So I think that gives more credence to San Diego State's defensive performance in that one.
Absolutely. But turning to the special teams, I thought Jack Browning was sensational at punting and terrible at field goals.
Yeah, it's becoming a problem. He's missed 6 out of 16 kicks, a couple in that 30-yard range.
Yep.
I think it's definitely a situation where there has to be some confidence issues, but not just by Browning, but by Coach Hoke in some fourth down situations, maybe having to go for it, because I don't know if you can be totally confident in Jack's field goal kicking at this point.
Yeah, and it is interesting because I think Gabe Placencia, his strength is supposed to be being as a field goal kicker. And it's interesting to see, like where he would be with that. We do remember, David Delgado, who's on scholarship over at South Alabama, left the program just because he didn't get an opportunity. And so it'll be interesting to see if one of the changes that they make during the bye week is to allow Placencia to give those field goals. It's really challenging to know whether or not he's better. They obviously have all of those metrics and all those things in practice. Placencia looks fine when he warms up, but he doesn't have anywhere near the leg that Browning does. But at this point, it's accuracy, right? And you think about, where that last drive that ended in a fumble would have been if it was 6-3 and they had another chance to be able to tie it and send it to overtime. And they couldn't because Jack Browning, didn't have that. So, or even before, going for it on fourth down, maybe they kick a long field goal because they had the other one. And it changes the game. It was a gut punch. I think it really, if there was going to be momentum, right? That was one of those first drives that they had really plus territory. And they couldn't get any points, and it just changes. You just need it. So I thought the special teams, again, at the same time, how many times did they kick the ball and down it inside the 20, inside the 10? They were able to do that really well. That set up all this field position that we're talking about because, they obviously didn't get a turnover. But what I'd like to ask you about is something that JD Wicker said it on episode 100, and he talked about the culture of the program. And the culture of the program can be described in a lot of ways, but it's blue collar, toughness. It's about being scrappy, even. I know those are sometimes can be synonyms. It's about being more physical and playing harder longer than the other team. I think that you could point to Air Force and Nevada for sure as games where that culture was not evident for SDSU. Do you think that is one of the, if you were, JD Wicker, you were thinking about the program, he was so adamant about how important, if you like the culture and you like the culture of the team, changing it, redoing a reset is there's a risk to it, which I completely agree. But do you think that the Nevada loss, Air Force, do you think those are signs that maybe the culture isn't as strong as maybe you would think it would be after 13 straight, bowl eligible seasons?
I definitely think so. I think those are solid signs of a culture that's not eroding, but is showing patches that are beginning to form. And I think losing builds that. I think beginning on a 3 or 4 game losing streak, that can definitely stymie a culture, especially when you've guys who are not playing, who think they should be playing, or you've got guys that think they're better than the guy next to them or ahead of them. We've seen it obviously even before the losing streak that some guys were transferring mid-season. We hadn't really seen that past. And guys that were actually playing and starting, like Dallas Branch and Jay Rudolph. I mean, sometimes when you saw transfers mid-season, it was guys that were, 5th, 6th stringers. But now you're seeing so there's a lot of questions there. And I don't know if that's necessarily a combination of the culture eroding or players losing faith and confidence in the coaching staff. But there's definitely something there that needs to be addressed. Whether that's a brand new coaching staff, whether there's changes in things the coaching staff needs to do, that's up to JD Wicker to address. Obviously, he told us last week that nothing's going to happen until the end of the season in that regard. But that doesn't mean that there's not things that they could do and he can get involved with now to try to change some of that in these last 4 weeks. At the end of the year, regardless of what happens in these 4 games, JD Wicker is going to have that Air Force game in his mind and that Nevada game in his mind. And that's going to factor in heavily to his decision. There's 3 ways this could play out, right? They could lose all 4 of their games, end up 3-7? No, 3-9.
Right.
And, I think a coaching change is paramount. They could win all 4 games, finish, 7-5, go to a decent bowl game, maybe win that 8-5. And I think there's not a coaching change to be made, regardless of what everybody else wants outside the program. And then maybe more realistic is that they win 2 of these games. They get bowl eligible. Maybe they get a bowl game. Maybe they don't. Oh, they have to win 3. Oh, yeah. If they win 2,
two's not good.
That's
2
right. Yeah.
2 is the biggest, is the craziest.
If they win 2, then it's like, that's where JD, I think those at Air Force Nevada game is going to speak heavily to his decision making. JD didn't tell us this, but I think heading into that first bye, right, regardless of the outside noise, he's looking at, okay, we're 2-4. We lost 4 games where we were heavy underdogs.
Yeah.
Some of them were blowouts and some of them we didn't play well or didn't compete. But hey, we lost to better teams. We're going to win. We're going to beat Hawaii. We're going to beat Nevada. We're going to win 2 or 3 of those last 4 games. We're going to go to a bowl game. We're going to be 7-5. maybe 8-5. We'll rate lower ticket prices next year. We'll do some more perks. We'll do some stuff that'll make the fans happy. But Brady will come back, and hopefully we'll hit the portal hard, and like we'll turn it around next week. I think that's what JD Wicker's mindset, if I'm trying to be in his shoes, was thinking. That Nevada game, I think, flips all of that around, because now the chances of even making a bowl game are very low, or lower. And everybody's going to remember this Nevada game. And it's going to be an interesting choice, because I think more and more, if I had to lean one way, I would lean towards a change being made at the end of the season.
I think I'm always, with things like this, maybe a little bit more cautious than I think most. I don't think you can overestimate how risky changing coaches will be. And I don't know if this is my longer history in San Diego and San Diego State that's coming to the forefront there. San Diego State has had a culture of winning for 13 straight years. And to abandon it after one bad year, I think the loudest voices and contingents on social media and stuff kind of lose their credibility because they weren't happy with the 12-2 season. And they'll tell you all the reasons why that wasn't real, and they actually were 2-12. If you change coaches and you do a reset on the culture, there's no promise that you're going to get the right person. There's no promise that you're going to find somebody who has the ability to know San Diego State's culture and win. There's a whole bunch of people who are from like the Rocky Long coaching tree that would be potentially available for the job. But it's kind of like, well, that's not a reset on the culture. And if you're not going to reset on the culture, like why would you get rid of the guy who put the culture there to begin with its foundation and keep Brady Hoke? So you'd have to go outside of that. And there's a ton of risk there. But I think so from my perspective, especially because the athletic director has said multiple times that he wants to give the benefit of having the whole thing there in front of him, I think that this decision is going to be actually pretty self-evident. I don't think that there's any reason or anything overly important about leaning one way or another right now, because I think in these next 4 games, question that has to be answered is, are you really pushing a reset on the culture if multiple games like this Nevada one pop up again? Like the culture's already, they somehow ruin the culture. The culture somehow isn't there if they can't respond to this. And it was interesting because when we were talking to Coach Lindley on Monday, he said, he mentioned the culture. He said, look, if we have the culture that we think we have, these kids are going to respond in the right way. And it's like, yeah, that's it. I think to me, that's just sort of like the most basic thing, that they are, I believe, at a crossroads. If they show all the culture that they have won these last 13 in the next month, I think it makes it a really easy decision. And you just say, okay, like it wasn't good. They haven't been able to get a quarterback. They've obviously whiffed on, 3 quarterbacks that they've brought in. If we can get a transfer quarterback, guy, now we got Lindley, we got to give him another year, all that stuff. Flip side of it is, if the toughness, physicality, competitiveness isn't there, I think that would answer it just as well. And with 3 years remaining, I think it makes that decision a little bit easier. And so I just think it's fun to talk about on a podcast, but I think the real answer is, we're all in a wait and see. And if they respond with leadership, if people step up in the locker room more vocal and they do all of those things, and you see that life come back to them where, they're running the same play, but lo and behold, it works a little bit better because they're finishing. Then I think you go and you say the culture is still strong and they have the ability to build on it for next season and to get back to winning with, some better players, without so many new starters and things of that nature.
I agree with you that there's risk in moving on and bringing a new coaching staff in that could make the team worse. That's certainly possible. because we've seen, and look at Nevada, they brought in a new coach. Now their other coach left; he wasn't fired, but they brought in a new coach, and they were 2-16 up until 2 weeks ago. So it can get worse than 3-5, where San Diego State is. But I do think there's some risk in staying the course and not changing anything around it and leading to the same path. And I think, but there is reward that a new guy could come in and galvanize a team, bring in portal players. You don't know. I think there's so much of an unknown there. I think ultimately we haven't talked about it, but there's a financial part of this. According to USA Today, a $4.8 million buyout. It's not really a buyout. I think people call it a buyout, but he has a guaranteed contract.
Right, which is 3 years after.
It's not a buyout. It's not like it's less money than his guaranteed contract. It's his full contract that he would be owed until June 30th, 2027, which is $4.8 million if you look at it from December 1st, because his contract goes July to June, right? So if you fire him at the end of the season, it has to be by December 1st, right? Because you want to get into the portal, you want the new staff, blah, blah, blah. He would still be paid for 3.5 more years, right? So there's that. There's also, I think Kirk Kenny did an article over a month ago, and he mentioned Kurt Maddox has a guarantee of $500K for next year, even if he's let go. So add $550K to the $4.8 million. So you're looking at $5.3.5 million, right? Ryan Lindley has a 2-year deal, but it's not guaranteed next year. So you wouldn't owe him money, but you would also be doing a big disservice to a former alumni and legend, because he moved his family over for a job and a year later it's gone. So, I mean, all of that has to be a factor, I think, JD Wicker, financially. And then you got to go hire a coach, hire a new OC, a DC, and Brady Hoke is getting paid one of the least head coaches in Mountain West, right? $1.3 million. So maybe you need $1.5 to $2 million to bring in the coach that you want to do this turnaround. Offensive coordinators, defensive coordinators. So that's a big financial thing that JD Wicker he has the numbers in front of him. He knows what they can do, right? They were ready to pay $17 million to go to a new conference. And doesn't look like they're going to
I have no idea what would have happened there. I mean,
it doesn't look like they're going to have to pay that.
No,
right?
With the way that Oklahoma and Texas basically just didn't get TV money for leaving. There was I have no idea what that number would have been.
But as a university, they would have had to budget, let's say $10 million, out of 7. They would have had to budget.
I think Oklahoma and them just didn't get TV money.
Yeah, but that's still negative, less money than you budgeted or forecasted, right? Not having to get TV money that you were forecasted versus not having to pay an exit fee. It's still in your accounting books.
Unless they get the SEC money. Yeah, I would need to go look at that again. So I don't want to talk about that. But again, we're talking
about Mountain West money here.
No, we are. But it was basically like going and saying like, oh, all of this punishment for leaving the conference, it was actually nothing.
I say that financial part is a big piece of it, because it's not like I think that's where the risk falls, is because if you make the change and you pay out that $5.3 million and you bring in a guy and you pay him $2 million and it doesn't work out, then what? Right? Then it's like 2 years from now, if the team is regressing even more, and it's like that guy's got another 3 years left on a deal, then you're basically you've taken steps back. But at the end of the day, these are all unknowns that we can't predict. So
no, we can't predict. But I mean, and you do talk about risk. I love the documentary Fog of War. Robert McNamara kind of gives his lessons of his life that he worked, former president of Ford, former defense secretary during the Vietnam War, was around with the whole Bay of Pig things with Kennedy, etc. And one of the things that he said is get the information. Like one of the lessons is figure out how to get the information. He were trying to make decisions for the Ford Corporation, and they just didn't have the information. So he spent a bunch of time going and getting the information. And I just think with this idea, if winning is your goal, and I think this is a really important point. If winning is your goal, which I think, again, I don't know that everybody winning is the most important thing. I think people want to be entertained first. and, winning second, which is fine. That's your choice. But if winning is your goal, I don't think right now, I don't think that the biggest risk is money. I think the biggest risk is that you're going to get a coach who is not going to be as good as Brady Hoke. I think that is, I don't even know exactly what it would be, but look at all of the guys who get hired across college football and who are unable to do the job wherever they're at. It would take an upset for Colorado with all of their entertainment to make a bowl game this year. And they're not going to make a bowl game because they gave up a 29-point lead to Stanford after, getting a couple upsets at the beginning of the year. They did all of their transfer portal stuff, and I think you would do a better job at left tackle than the poor Deion Sanders' son, who just seems to get shellacked every game. There's no guarantee he's going to be able to bring a winner there.
No,
There
but
really
I think the true test for Colorado is next year.
But I mean, again, we don't need. I mean, yeah, it could be maybe the other side of it is to say how many first round quarterbacks is Dion going to be able to bring in, who's going to be able to have experience and all of those things and know the offense like the back of his hand. And I mean, the other side of it, you could argue that they'll never have a better opportunity his whole time than right now because they'll be known, there'll be tape. His son is going to leave at some point, and whenever that is and what that looks like. But again, if you're talking about winning, you don't know that Colorado is going to win. Yep, they sold tickets. Yep, they did all that stuff. But do you think, like, did they bridge the talent gap between them and Oregon, even with everybody in the world going? And how about SC? No. How about, you know what I mean? Like it takes a long time to be able to do it. I still think that that's the biggest risk. I know that people, have, I guess, they didn't enjoy winning as a 7-6. That was really bad for them last year. I think that's the risk a lot more than money. I think the Snapdragon has been more successful financially than they anticipated, which, JD Wicker said. But I think the risk is that you go and you get somebody who doesn't get the culture that is San Diego State, doesn't understand how to win when you have, the deck stacked against you, who, is going to come in and everybody's going to expect that person to not just win 6, 7, 8 games, but they're going to have to win 9 and 10 and be competing for a national or for a spot in the New Year's Six Bowls, or else they're failures. It's not an easy job. The resources, have gotten better. Obviously, Snapdragon is great, but the gut punch of not getting into the Pac-12 or the Pac-12 changing and all that stuff, I think there's tremendous risk, which is why the question that I want to see answered before making up my mind is I want to see whether or not the culture is still strong at San Diego State. If they come out against Utah State, Colorado State, San Jose State, and the plan is like we have all year to be there in person. For me, Air Force is still one of the biggest questions about their culture, because I was out on the field after the game and they have all of the kids in Colorado Springs throwing the ball around, and those Air Force guys look like they could played another game. They weren't beat up by San Diego State. They weren't, they look good. That was the first time that I had seen it. That's the question. That's the bit of information that I need to know before just being able to say what risk is, because if San Diego State's culture that has made it successful for 13 years is still strong and intact, that I would argue is still their best shot at reaching the heights that they all want to reach. Flip side of it is, I think there's very little risk if that culture is gone.
You could make a case that the Air Force performance was even more embarrassing than the Nevada performance, because as you said, it was so uncompetitive on both sides of the ball. It was astonishing. At least against Nevada, the defense played hard, physical. The offense didn't score, But in Air Force, they only scored 10 points, so it's not like the offense did that much better against Air Force. Obviously, the opponent is very different. Air Force is a top 25 team, but just the way that they let Air Force basically get 9-10 yards a play without even having a defender finally get to the carrier, I think was you can make the case that that performance was even more embarrassing than against Nevada.
Yeah, yeah, and again, that's the whole thing is like then they have a bye week. I'm not sure if I get my weeks right. Maybe there was a game before it, but
Yeah, no,
they
you're right.
go and they go there and they respond, get 21 points, come back, get punched in the mouth, win at Hawaii, and they look like that's what an Aztec culture should do. I mean, there's been bad games in the past that these teams have had, and then, they respond. And then, they get another bye week here to be able to do the same thing. But to me, that's the question. I just want to be able to see the information, and I don't think that we have it. I don't think that we have it. And I think that, if they end up going 5-7, winning two of them, oh man, this is when JD Wicker makes the big bucks, and he's really going to have to be, I think, able to see the intangibles of all of the things that are there, because then I think it could come down to what happened in Nevada. But the flip side of it is, they are going to have to play really good football to be able to be competitive against Utah State, Colorado State, San Jose State, and Fresno State. I agree with you. They can win all of them and they can lose all of them. And, there's any of those combinations that could happen. But that's I think for me, as I'm trying to cover this team, that is my major question and that's what I'll write about. I mean, that's what I'm going to write about for my article after this game. Is I want to see that culture. I want to go walk around the field if it's not too cold in Colorado and in Fort Collins before the game, and I want to see like where is this team? Like what are they doing? I thought that to that point, I thought Coach Lindley gave a great interview on Monday. His general tone I thought was fantastic. I like that he said it would be too soft for us to tell him to forget this game. He said it would be too soft, that we're not going to tell them to forget about this game. In fact, we wanted to fuel them because that was embarrassing, and that edge that Aztec teams have always played with, they're not playing with right now. So, do you have any time for baseball?
Yeah.
All right, dude. So I got to go out to a baseball game, and it was fun, man. It was a trip because they're playing one of the best junior college teams, which which was just weird to me. I don't know how all the rules works, but it seems like that's a great recruiting strategy, to be able to play, and I'm sure goes back to Sean Cole. Arizona is an Arizona team. I think they've won 2 of the last 4 Central Arizona College of the Junior College World Series. It was very much like spring training for the pitchers, but the position players did not rotate a whole bunch. But it was fun. It was great to be out there. I didn't know crowd wise like what to expect, but there was easily over 100 people there. I did not expect to see Major League Scouts, but Major League Scouts were there. They had their guns ready, which tells me that Sean Cole's description of Xavier Cardenas as their ace and somebody who should be a top 5 pitcher, not round wise, but overall,
Yeah.
was not bravado, was not him trying to encourage the kid. There was definitely a lot of the scouts there. So it was a good day. Troy Melton was there, who is one of the Detroit Tigers' top prospects. They're calling him a can't miss guy. And it was interesting to see him there because he was sitting right where all the scouts typically are. And during COVID, when it was the media and scouts were the only people who were allowed there, the only section that had people in it was the section that he was sitting in, because that's where all the scouts were. But I thought there were some good signs from the team all around. They have a lot of guys who the new scoreboard. They got a new radar gun out there, so it shows how fast they were pitching. A lot of guys touching 90, 94. Cardenas, had some strikeouts. I thought they had a lot of good arms. And the guys that they put there, they did some walks and things like that. Defensively, it was a little sloppy, I'll be honest. there wasn't a ton of like, just great baseball, which is kind of what you'd expect from a first exhibition, with the exception of this one unbelievable bomb that one of the CAC guys hit. The San Diego State pitcher, he like airmailed a pitch that like went over the catcher and like hit the backstop with a huge thud. And then the next pitch, he just hung a breaking ball. And this big dude, left-handed guy, pulled it, and like there's a building that's right next to Tony Gwynn Stadium, and he hit it on the roof of that building like it was a shot, which was the only earned run that they had out of the four that they scored. But after the game, Sean Cole talked about, getting together with his coaching staff, and they had a lot of kinks to work out, or not a lot of kinks. He said, minor stuff of just how they're going to call games. I think Maxwell Foxcroft, he was the first base coach. And so he's a short guy, and it was funny to see some of the bigger guys get on the base, and it looks like they got like their little brother next to him, but it's a coach. And then and the other coach was their third base coach was the former major league player, blanking on his name.
Tony Tarasco.
Tony Tarasco, thank you. And so he was very vocal with that. Julius McDougal, he was top step of the dugout, directing the defense. There were some exciting plays. I thought, they talked about wanting to be more aggressive on the base paths. So there was a couple of like, medium depth singles that they were able to stretch into doubles. They had a stolen base. All in all, man, I thought it was a lot of fun. And I think there was nothing about that game that didn't go according to like what your script would be for the season, which is like they're going to win by pitching and defense and just enough timely hitting to maybe be able to, and I think that game kind of showed that. But it's November 16th, next opportunity for people to get out there. But that's my quick baseball report.
The red and black game is an intra-squad scrimmage, right?
It is, yeah.
Okay.
And they're expecting a whole bunch of alumni. They use the Gwynns plural, so I'm guessing that's Anthony Gwynn and Chris Gwynn, his uncle, who they both played there. Travis Lee is supposed to be there, Golden Spikes Award winner, number 1 overall pick by the Diamondbacks, and when they were an expansion team, if I remember correctly. So they're expecting a lot of these guys to come back. Cole talked about that a lot of these guys, Cole Carrig, in addition to Melton, Kalena Sauer, have been around the team, and they're all kind of coaching them about, here's what it means to be focused and to do, all of these things as a professional, and like focus and training and things like that. So they're getting the opportunity to kind of, see that from some of their former teammates, people that they know. So I think it's really positive to see all those guys coming back, all those guys getting around the program and that excitement. And any time that you can get out to Tony Gwynn Stadium around noon on a very mild, nice day is a great venue to watch baseball. It was fun.
For our listeners who missed it, episode 97, we interviewed all 4 baseball coaches, including Sean Cole, Tony Tarasco, Julius McDougal, and Maxwell Foxcroft. We put out the audio, obviously, on all the audio platforms.
Mm-hmm.
But if you watch that interview, we put out the YouTube, the video version on YouTube if you want to see them on screen. So check that out if you haven't. It was one of our favorite ones to do. Our only one with multiple guests at once. So it was kind of a cool one, and we'd love to do it again with them, maybe when the season is about to start early next year.
Absolutely. Yeah.
What about basketball?
I was about to say, and then the national runners up, they had an exhibition game. So that was interesting. I felt bad for Cal State San Marcos. Jaden Ledee was a monster.
Foul drawing machine.
Gosh, and it's funny because Coach Dutcher said post game that the refs just stopped calling them. And there were some really bad ones that you're just like, what do they got to do to be able to get another call? But it was interesting, another slow start. Slow starts have been something that multiple teams under Dutcher have had a question about. They obviously got it started a little bit quicker, but it was funny because where press row is, it's right behind the opposing team's bench. And they had a lead. San Marcos had a lead at the beginning. And they the coach is walking down and he's like, look, they bleed. They bleed. Like he was trying to get his team to believe that an upset was possible. And they I thought they played well. I thought they played together. You could see that they're a college team. But I thought it was super fun, man. What are your initial thoughts about what you saw in the first exhibition?
I liked what I saw. Obviously, no Darian Trammell, so the starting lineup was a little bit different. Less, ball handlers. You got Elijah Saunders in there, so he was a little bit more of a forward slash big man. Lamont Butler looked like he was on cruise control, was basically, letting others kind of take a lot of shots. He didn't take many shots. I think he had a couple buckets. He had that one, the coast to coast one with the finger roll. Really nice. But yeah, I think you could tell Jaden Ledee is going to be the focal point of the offense. It's going to take a while. I think Micah Parrish and Reese Waters were kind of getting used to what they could do in this offense. Neither of them, I don't think, shot the 3-point well. But, it's an exhibition game. I think they did what they needed to do. Miles Bird was impressive. His length defensively was really good. Miles Heidi. I think both Heidi and DeMarshe Johnson played well. And, as we've talked about and we've written, in my opinion, I think that 9th rotation spot's going to come down to those two guys. And I was giving Miles Heidi the edge based on what I had seen and heard from what was going on at practice. But, I think both played well. Both did nice things. So, yeah, I think that competition will continue to play out, at least for the first week or two of the regular season.
No, and I thought you said it well. I mean, there's so much. A couple of the other things that really stood out to me. I thought Reese Waters was bad defensively. I thought that there was a couple of times where people just blew past him and got layups. And I think there's nothing that's gonna get the ire of the coaches more than that. Interestingly enough, if they do end up when Trammell comes back, having 4 smaller guys with Ledee as the one post, in that scenario, Waters would be playing somebody bigger than him, and you would assume it would be harder for that person to blow by him. So that was an interesting concept, but he just did. And then I saw a couple times watching. I wanted to see because we talked to Dave Velasquez, which that episode will be coming out later. We got to get all of our preview articles out before turning that loose on the podcast. But when we talked to Dave Velasquez, he talked about that it wasn't the man-to-man stuff; it was all the stuff behind it. And there was a few times where, in just watching that aspect of it, that Reese Waters and Miles Heidi, and I'm not sophisticated enough to know who was at fault. I'd have to see that multiple times from up high or whatever. But they had trouble with picking up the right person, and it led to layups. So I just thought that if you're looking for how do these guys play defense, they're not there. But I thought that Dave Velasquez said that neither was Micah Parrish at the beginning, neither was Darian Trammell, and I think that was incredibly evident last year at the beginning as well. And then they turned into really good defenders. And I asked Coach Dutcher how he thought the new guys were performing defensively. And, again, another really positive guy. He's not going to say too many things negative, but he said they're trying hard. You know what I mean? Like they're competing really hard. They're trying, there was a lot of effort. But then he also said, for the most part, and I thought that was an interesting thing about, if they do find a guy not showing effort on that side, that person is not going to play, no matter how good their offense is. Going back to the, Chad Baker, Mazzara, and the offense that team played, which was not great. And he was a spark, but he just could not see the court because he wouldn't play defense. So
he's at Auburn now, right? For Bruce Pearl.
Tons of talent, talented.
Yeah, we'll see how much he plays there. I'm curious to keep an eye on him.
Absolutely. I was with I was I remember talking to him, and he's back home in the Dominican, and we're on a Zoom, and, just getting to know him. Great kid. Talked with his dad, same kind of thing, interviewing him, got to learn about his upbringing, the whole bit. Great kid. But then the other part I thought that was really interesting is I was curious if Elijah Saunders if he was starting in place of Miles Heide, as in he was going to be a center, and he was not.
No.
And I thought you could 100% see how lethal their offense could be if they can play the smaller lineup. And, that would involve Elijah Saunders doing what he did on Monday. He hit a three, and making people respect him on the outside. But the room that Jaden Ledee had, because all those shooters had to be reckoned with inside, man, was something else. The flip side of it was when they had DeMarshe Johnson, when they had Miles Heide in there, Jaden Ledee hit a couple threes. He also had
Yeah.
like a step back two to beat a long step back two to beat the buzzer. So he was just sensational. I think your point about Miles Heide and DeMarshe Johnson were true. The hard part is that DeMarshe is incredibly athletic. I was surprised how thin he was. Tron Johnson did the first preview for Fullerton, and so I was going through last year's pictures to try to get pictures for his article. And DeMarshe played against Fullerton last year, and he was a lot bigger in terms of
Yeah.
just girth. And so I thought that was really interesting. But I thought he was long. I thought he was athletic. And Miles Heide, it's his first game at Viejas, all of those kinds of things. So I thought he did fine for that. I did think that they had such a huge advantage against those players. I think maybe I thought that it was, I think you hope for a little bit more. But I think at the end of the day, what's going to decide how many guys they go with and what guys they go and which ones they are, I think has as much to do with if they're going to be able to play small or not. Because if they can't play small, they're going to need Heide and Johnson to be able to play that center position. But it's the start, man. It's the start of basketball. It's good times.
Yeah, I mean, I have one last thing on basketball. Every year, I feel like the biggest question mark on these teams are their 3-point shooting. And, they're 7 of 25. But if you look at Micah Parrish, he was 0 for 6 in this one. He was 1 for 7 against Arizona State in the closed door scrimmage. Reese Waters was 1 for 4 and 2 for 7 in that other one. So the guys that you're counting on to be your 3-point shooters haven't necessarily played well in the two exhibitions. But, these don't count, right? These don't go in the stat book. So they start clean on Monday against Fullerton. Jaden Ledee was the only one that hit more than 1 3 on the entire team against Cal State San Marcos. So that kind of goes to what he told us about him stepping out and shooting threes and showing his whole repertoire. So
Yes, sir.
We'll see that. I think obviously he's primed for a big season.
Sneaky hard game to open the season.
Yeah.
Fullerton, they won 20 games last year. They have 2 guys who are coming back for their super senior year, including a guard who gave Lamont Butler fits last year. And, you didn't know what that was all about, but then he goes and he's the Big West, I believe, defensive player of the year as a guard. He's back and he's laughing to Santiago. Vincent Lee, who I thought played strong and good at times last year, he's back. Got some transfers in, and I think that they play defense. I think in many ways they're similar to the Aztecs last year in terms of just being old, and as San Diego State's trying to figure themselves out, again, it's just a sneaky game. It's just a sneaky game because no one's expecting anything from Fullerton, but they weren't all that bad. Big West tournament finals. That's what they got to. Lost to UC Santa Barbara, who it was good. I think by 10. And they can play defense. I think that no matter if San Diego State does in fact decide to go small, I think that they match up well that way against San Diego State, because I think they also play small. And so that chess match will be interesting. But I think this is a pretty sneaky game. San Diego State took a big run in the second half to pull away from Fullerton last year, and like I said, it's just sneaky. It's like the recipe of new guys, young guys, old guys who have been there for a long time. Those gaps always kind of seem to develop. But end of the day, I think Jaden Ledee will continue to be the best player on the court, which means San Diego State should walk away with a win.
Yeah, Darion Trammell's injury up in the air. We don't know whether he's going to play. The basketball team has a press conference before practice on Friday that I'm hoping to attend, and maybe we can get some more information on that, on his shoulder injury. But we'll see. Him missing time could, factor in some of these tough early games that they've got, because they play at BYU. Then they go to Vegas for that Continental Tournament. So yeah, tough games, one by one after another, and having Trammell healthy, not just playing, but healthy and looking like his old self, will be very important.
No doubt.
All right, to close out the episode, we can get back to football. Utah State's coming to town on Saturday. Yeah. Homecoming weekend. We're not going to go through, a full preview segment. You could read my preview that I posted on eastvillagetimes.com to get the information. Obviously, both teams have identical records, both coming off a bye. 4:00. It is now on Fox Sports 1 because the World Series is over. Right. So make sure you check your current, if you're recording the game or watching it on TV. And we're not, as I said, you can read my preview if you want to get a primer on what Utah State it looks to do. They've got a potent offense and a subpar defense. But let's get into predictions. What do you think happens on Saturday night, Paul?
I have no idea. Thank you for listening to the SDSU football podcast.
Come on.
No. First of all, anybody who doesn't if you have gotten to this point in this podcast and not read Andre's preview, you're missing out. I cannot tell you how much respect that I have. I'm telling you, that preview that Andre wrote, there will be probably, 80% of the previews looking at the Super Bowl, which will not be as high quality as what Andre just did for Utah State and San Diego State, 2, 3, and 5 teams that are trying to figure out their season. That's a fact. And just tip my hat to you, because we're this far into the season and you're still like grinding and putting out great work. And when the team's losing, our viewership and all people clicking on our articles and stuff goes way down. And yet you make the work and being a professional like what matters. And I was reading that and editing that and just being like, this is just so good. So as far as predictions are concerned, I don't know, because I think there's still talent on this Aztec team. They're not living up to the talent, but I think we're going to know quick. Utah State has a difficult time getting into the game. I think what ends up happening is they have a very good offensive staff and they figure out how teams are playing them defensively. And then they kind of can get going as the game wears on. Oh, I guess if I'm framing it that San Diego State's culture needs to step up in this game, listening to their offense coordinator talk about how spirited their practice are, other people telling us that they're practicing well. I'm going to say the culture is strong and San Diego State finds a way to win. I have no idea what kind of game we're in there. I think San Diego State's going to get some turnovers. I think they're going to possess the ball, and I think you're gonna see an Aztec win, and they're going to be at 4-5, and then heading on the road to a snow game in Colorado State.
I on paper, I give Utah State the edge. I think they've got more playmakers on both sides of the ball.
Completely agree.
But I see San Diego State coming out and getting the victory 23-20 on a late field goal by Jack Browning or Gabriel Placencia.
Oh, that would be something.
I think they're at home coming off of the loss. I think they can fight it out and they can sneak out a victory against Utah State. You know, they're a talented offensive team. They've got playmakers, so it's going to be a big challenge for the secondary, for the entire defense. They have to get more pressure on the quarterback. They have to force turnovers. I think they can get some of that going this week and sneak out a victory.
No, I like it. Things that I am looking for in this game. I'm thinking that there's going to be some personnel changes. I think you're going to see New Zealand Williams get extensive time this game at linebacker. We asked Coach Lindley about some of those changes, and he just kind of said, well, we don't want to give it away for gamesmanship. So we'll see what those are coming out of the bye week. But I think I would expect to see, you know, the quarterback be able to throw the ball more than 14 times. I think that in some ways, not trying to climb back into the conference championship race is going to let them play a little bit freer. And so I'm looking to see what those changes are. And I'm looking to see if the defense can have another good performance. Because as inconsistent as San Diego State has been, Utah State has been right behind them. Albeit when they haven't been inconsistent, they've been pretty flashy.
Can't disagree there. That's going to do it for us. Thanks, guys, for listening. Hope you enjoyed this episode 101. We will obviously be at Snapdragon Stadium covering the game on Saturday. Hope to see you guys out there at homecoming. And as always, we appreciate you guys listening, liking, sharing, commenting, all of the above on all your favorite platforms. And we'll talk to you guys next time. You are listening to the SDSU podcast presented by the East Village Times with your hosts Andre Hagberdian and Paul Garrison. Episode of the SDSU podcast is sponsored by Marz Energy Cream, the first ever topical energy delivery product. Think energy drink, but it's a lotion. It contains a proprietary blend of natural ingredients, including caffeine, taurine, and B vitamins, to provide an energizing boost. And unlike traditional energy drinks and gels, Marz Energy Cream is sugar-free, contains no artificial flavors, colors, or preservatives. If you want to try it out, go to marzenergydrinkcream.com and use the code Andre, spelled ANDRE, at checkout to receive 15% off a purchase of a 50 milliliter tube.